This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. We're in Grand Rapids again this week for the podcast, and joining me is Jeremy Kosmicki, brewmaster for Founders. Welcome to the podcast, Jeremy.
How you doing, Jamie?
We're going to talk about brewing, all sorts of stuff on this issue here's my magazine mind creeping into the podcast. This episode of the podcast, you all have built a juggernaut in All Day IPA, and of course you build touchstone beers for craft beer in the stout world. We'll talk about all of those things and the your approach to all of these beers. And before we do that, for years G&D Chillers has chilled the beers you love, partnering with 3,000 plus breweries across the country. They are proud of the cool partnerships they've built over the past 30 years. They know brewing doesn't stop at 5 o'clock, and nor do they. G&D uses quality components, expert craftsmanship, and constant innovation. With 24/7 service and support, your brewery will never stop. Remote monitor your chiller for simple and fast access to all the information you need, providing you with peace of mind your operation will be running smoothly. Reach out for a quote today at gdchillers.com or call to discuss your next project. Also, this episode is brought to you by BSG, distributors of TNS hop oils. Looking for a way to save on freight, reduce waste, all while improving beer quality? Then change your brewing game with TNS hop oils. Visit bsgcraftbrewing.com to learn how TNS hop oils can make your beer and your margins better. Of course, before we start, I want to say thank you to Experience Grand Rapids for their support in making this trip possible. To plan your own beer trip to Grand Rapids, start at experiencegr.com. So, Jeremy, we normally start the podcast off talking about history. You've got a long history here at Founders. What's your beer history and your brewing history look like?
Okay, well, yeah, started homebrewing like most of us.
Sure.
I think I was 19 going on 20, and man, I could buy a kit to make my own beer right at home. The internet was a new thing at the time. Ordered it all on alternativebeer.com, and they would send me everything you needed. Plus, they would do little recipe packs. So an Anchor Porter clone was the very first one we got going there. And man, the homebrews were going good. So it became a pretty, obsessive passion. And then I found myself unemployed from the auto detailing industry. I was done doing that, ready to move on. Came down to Founders, who was, the city's biggest brewery. They had been around for a few years.
Biggest being a relative thing at the time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, they had
not what it was, it is now.
They had a 30-barrel brew house, which is pretty big.
Sure,
they were going for it, but
right.
They were, brewing like once a week, so it was not a lot going on. But hey, I went down and asked the bartender if they were hiring, and she says, "Hold on a second," and goes in the back, and packaging guy comes out. He's like, "Can you start right now?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, I got nothing going on. I was hoping to maybe scrounge some change and get a couple beers while I'm here, but I'll come back and see what's going on." So that was it. That was my foot in the door, and they paid mostly in beer, maybe a little scratch under the table, but I was in a position where I could manage that because, wow, I was working in a brewery, and I thought that was pretty cool. So, just stuck around there, just trying to pick up every odd job I could. And sure enough, a good friend of mine, one of my homebrew buddies, Nate Walser, had been brewing across town at New Holland, assistant brewer over there, and our brewer at Founders left, and the assistant left after that. So Nate and I kind of took over the brewing program, and Mike and Dave, the owners, were like, make whatever you want, just make some good beer, make some tasty stuff. So we started reaching into into our homebrew archives and pulling out some recipes that were fun. I mean, that's where things like breakfast stout and Red's Rye and those kind of beers came from. So that was, I'm living the dream at that point, right? I went from unemployed to homebrewer to making recipes at Founders, and just did every job in that place. And Nate left in 2005, so I took over the brewing department then. Yeah, the rest is history.
So your sole professional brewing experience is at Founders.
That's it.
You've been riding it, man. That's that's something.
They can't get rid of me.
Well, there was a lot of learning on the job then, popping from a homebrew kit to a 30-barrel brew house.
Right.
I can only imagine trying to translate homebrew recipes up like that. How'd you start doing that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Well, we actually, Nate designed a little, kind of like a 1-barrel. It was really rudimentary, but it got the job done. We did a couple on that, but kind of realized that it wasn't really worth our time making that small of an amount. I mean,
yeah,
those are the kind of beers that people wanted to drink, so they would sell out immediately. So we started scaling up and making stuff, just for our tap room. What I really wanted to do was have a cool tap room with some selection and kind of make that place a destination spot. But Mike and Dave had different ideas. And then when they told me they wanted to start putting some of these beers into bottles, I said, what are you, crazy? Nobody wants to drink that beer out in the world, but man, I was wrong. People did want it.
Sure. Well, and of course there's a whole different production mentality that you have to take now. Once you put it into bottles,
yeah,
you have to be able to think about how you're formulating this, how that thing is going to live, in that kind of packaging. How did you start solving some of those issues in the early days?
Yeah, that's been one of the hardest parts is, now when I design recipes, it's always like, is this even scalable, or should I not even do this? Because as soon as, sales or marketing is like, oh, we really like that, let's do that. I'm like, oh, some of those beers, even like Breakfast Out, for example.
Yeah.
It's just, it was fun when you made it like, once a year or something, and, you're having a party and it smells like chocolate and coffee and we're all excited. And, then it becomes when it became a production beer and you had to figure all that out, and it's just extra work. It's a lot of
chocolate and a lot of coffee,
a lot of extra steps, but it's all worth it.
You say that they just said, go make some beers.
Basically.
There's got to be more to it than that. There has to be more to it than that. There has to be some sort of direction. And you guys had to start building an identity for what Founders was. Because it's one thing when it's a local audience that are coming to a tap room and it can just be whatever because people have an idea that Founders makes quality beer. But once you then start distributing beer, it has to connect with people in some way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when they started, when I joined, they had all the beers that I'm sure they were told to make back in the, mid 90s. You got to have your wheat
Standard
beer,
playbook,
you got to have an amber ale. So, to come out with beers, not like that, it was attention grabbing. Like people were like, wow, they were different, unlike things that they were used to drinking. And, it was a bit of a select audience back then, but it grew really quick. There was a lot of people that were interested in something new, something different. So what a great opportunity to try out some recipes. And the market was just ripe at the time, right, for that kind of stuff.
And some of those beers you still make these days.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
that's I find that one of the coolest things that we still have some of those recipes, because this industry, things change so quick.
Yes,
the consumers just are onto something new, and we try to keep up. But it's so awesome that we have so many like throwback things that are still not big volume beers for us, but they're important for your portfolio. I like to have a round portfolio full of different offerings and have something for everybody, hopefully.
Sure. And it's strange, honestly, to think of that. Like, what was it? The Red Riot? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
That a beer like that is still something that you could make, which doesn't seem to hit any of the current trends or expectations for what people are generally buying in hoppy beer.
Yeah, right.
But that there's just this little corner and niche for it.
Yeah, that Red Riot in particular, that's it's like, it's an employee favorite. Like you go down in the tap room, and I bet half the people's shift beers are Red's Rye. It's just got that cult following that people still, they once you get hooked on it, it's like you gotta have it.
What do you think it is that makes it so hooky?
I'm not sure. It's probably a little bit sentimental.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are like, that's just
the nostalgia play.
Yeah, the nostalgia for sure. And it's a tasty beer, and it's like you said, it's not at all what is trendy at the moment, but I don't know. That's what's kind of.
It's not what you sell a bunch of in other kinds of places.
Right, sure.
Yeah. But so is it really more locality thing where it sells really well around here, or is it something that only stays in the tap room, or does it still get out into some production now?
Well, I tell you the truth is that we stopped putting it into package because of shelf life concerns with that beer.
Sure.
You know, you get a hop forward beer with
Yep.
some crystal malt in there, and they deter. You know, it's a shadow of itself
Exactly.
in 2 months or something. So we switched to draft only, mainly here at our tap room, but we do have some accounts that still do draft of it. So.
And that way you can keep a closer eye on it, and it won't age out.
Know that it's going to stay cold. You know, generally kegs stay in the cooler, whereas
Right.
if you got 6-pack, and they're going to end up on the warm shelf in most places.
Sure. Well, let's talk about some of the evolutions of some of these beers, because I think that's another interesting thing. Like, yes, you're making breakfast stout now, but I imagine it's gone through some changes over the years, just as the way that everyone brews IPA has now, gone through a number of changes over the years. And yes, they might be the same brands, but everything gets a little bit of a nip and a tuck and a little, fresh approach, especially. And of course, beer is also an agricultural product, changes from year to year. All of these inputs and ingredients have been changing over that. So let's talk a little bit about some of that evolution. Before we do that, AccuBrew is a new analytical tool unlike anything else on the market that gives brewers like you unprecedented insight into your fermentation process. You can remotely monitor sugar conversion, temperature, and clarity to ensure consistency by quickly detecting out-of-range conditions. The AccuBrew system creates and stores permanent records so you can compare every batch. AccuBrew goes beyond a simple measurement tool. AccuBrew helps you monitor, document, and manage your fermentation process in real time. Also, at ProBrew, they believe that your brewery deserves equipment as unique as the drinks that you craft. That's why their solutions are specifically designed to help you brew your beer, not someone else's. From brewing to fermenting to carbonating and can filling, ProBrew's customizable equipment empowers breweries to expand operations at their own pace. For more information, visit www.probrew.com or email contactus@probrew.com to learn exactly how they can take your operations to the next level. ProBrew, brew your beer. And if you hear Old Orchard mentioned in the brewing community, don't be surprised. The flavored craft juice concentrate blends from Old Orchard have shipped to over 46 states from right here in Beer City, USA. Their new brewing customers often mention discovering Old Orchard through word-of-mouth recommendation of another brewer. To join the core of Old Orchard's brewing community, learn more at oldorchard.com/brewer. So let's talk about that change. If you're kind of, putting on your early brewer hat and were to look at how that beer has made some changes over the years, are there any key points that, where, you made some tweaks and to keep it fresh or to take it to where you wanted it to be given the current context?
I'll be honest. Most of those original beers are pretty true to their original recipes. You're just
disproving my theory here.
I just when you need something new and the industry changes, we have been just making new products. So beers like porter, breakfast stout, even Centennial IPA. I mean, those are pretty true to what they were originally. You make some tweaks. You do things to improve your efficiency. You find better prices on some things. Mm-hmm. I think with breakfast stout in particular, we've been through a couple different chocolate sources. Had to switch up some coffees due to it's a commodity, right? It's got supply and cost issues, so you stay on top of that. But all of our vendors and our partners are helpful in that and helping us find suitable replacements and and working through that. And then we'll do the R&D and stay on top of that. I drink the beers regularly and make sure they're all true to brand and.
Quality control.
Lots of quality
control. You got to do the quality control. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are there any beers that have changed over that kind of time?
Let me think. What are we still making? Dirty Bastard, that's all the same. I don't know. I feel like once I get something dialed in, I kind of leave it. And if, the industry demands something new, I go for that. I avoided the hazy game as long as I could. And then... So that's still relatively.
Why'd you avoid it?
I don't like them.
No.
I mean, I've come a long way, but when they first came out, I thought they were an abomination, and I was like, I don't know. I like my beer clean and pretty and refined and professional looking, and I just thought they were ridiculous. But, you know,
But you came around.
I had to. I mean, well, part of the other problem was I've seen so many trends come and go,
Right.
and a brewery of our size cannot just chase every trend that comes. So I've been, forcefully trying to not jump into things that are going to be dead here in a year or two, because it's just a waste of our time. But the hazies lasted much longer than I anticipated originally.
And at least it's beer and not seltzer.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Although now it looks like people not jumping on the seltzer train may have been in retrospect, a decent move. Well, that whole thing seems to be going a strange direction. One of the hits you all did have, was in the session beer space, and especially the hoppy kind of session beer with All Day. That one seemed to, and you all seem to be on the very front end of that. But brewing a beer like that can be a hard enterprise. That capturing a beer in that kind of 4% ABV range, that also has body, that also has a compelling hop character. It's not an easy nut to crack from a brewing perspective. Talk to me a little bit about and of course you've expanded that family and have All Day IPA and a hazy All Day IPA, even a black IPA all day variation, which is, it's a little crazy that I would not have suspected that there was a market for that beer.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
I mean, other than me,
right?
I might be the target market for that one. Talk to me about going through the development process, for brewing this very low ABV hoppy beer.
Yeah, most difficult recipe I ever had to design. For sure.
Bet it is. Yeah,
I spent a long time on it. Fortunately back then there was no gun to the head about get this done. We're looking at I got a May release on this beer. It wasn't like that. It was kind of just we all needed that beer. We all loved hops here. I'm talking about us working here.
Sure.
But man, our regular IPA, Centennial IPA, is almost 7.5% alcohol. So it was not a productive thing to have one of those at lunch and then, get back to work. And All Day was brewed out of necessity. We had our lightest beer. Well, because we cut our teeth on these bigger, higher alcohol, massive flavor beers. So it was quite a departure to get back or to go to something light. We had a beer in our tap room, brewed exclusively for our tap room at the time. It was Solid Gold, and it was before it was the lager. It was just a golden ale, and we only had that because people would come to our tap room and be like, "Can I get a Bud Light?"
Right.
And be like, "Well, no, but here, try this." So the thought was, could we take that mentality of a light, easy drinking beer, but brew it to taste like us hopheads wanted it to taste like? So that was where it started. But man, I did a lot of versions of that. It's hard. I had a lot to learn about how to keep that body in there. Don't overdo that bitterness, but still have hop presence that you wanted. So, but when I finally did land on the recipe that it is, we all knew at that point. It was like, that's it. That's the one. And at least for us, we had no idea that it was going to grow to what it was. It started it was going to be our summer seasonal. And you got through the summer and it was just on fire. And we're like, okay, we can't stop making it. So it became a year-round thing. And I think it was still glass then even. And when we switched to cans and then the 15-pack, and it was just everything came together. Right beer at the right time.
And that 15-pack of All Day is now what everyone up here in the upper Midwest chases,
right.
And it's now the reference, like, I don't know, how do I compete with, a 15-pack of All Day IPA? I hear it over and over again from others here in the industry. But I'm curious about that. Like, there's a lot of ways to build that body. You can't leave a lot of residual sugar in there, because it's such a small beer. And, people also, especially if they're drinking a small beer, need it to be that light. Are you solving that then through, water, through, yeast that's, producing some other, metabolizing some other, compounds that then add some heft to it? How are some of the ways that you solve for body in a beer that small?
Yeah, you can't just put crystal malt in there to balance that sweetness. So what I go for is more of an implied sweetness, more of a, it's adjuncts, I think, that really give that some mouthfeel without that cloying sweetness that is not appropriate. So, this thing's packed with oats and wheat and corn and it's a pretty complex malt bill actually for as simple of a beer as it
Sure.
is. And part of the reason it took so long to dial in was really getting that right. But I believe that heavy on those adjuncts, although it terminates at a nice low drinkable level, it's something about it doesn't get too dry on the palate. So
Where is it? About where it finishes?
it's two Plato.
Yeah. So a nice drinkable. Is there anything to the way you treat water in this that helps support that feeling of body?
No, it gets calcium chloride and calcium sulfate, and Michigan, right here in Grand Rapids, particular, our water the municipal water comes from Lake Michigan, so it's really stable, consistent. It's got a great mineral count, so we're kind of blessed like that I don't have to mess with the water all that much. Yep.
Sure. How about hops and something like that? Again, making a nuanced hop selection so that they can fit together and be pleasant. But also there's also a physical component. As we know that hops can actually add to the texture itself in some ways. They can be more functional and not just flavor driven.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about how you build hop bill and something that light.
Sure. Well, I stuff hops in this thing in every step that I can. That was I wanted to find ways to get that hop character in there without affecting the bitterness too much. So this beer gets hops in the mash. I start first wort hopping with this thing, and of course big late charges, and then a nice warm dry hop. And some of those early charges, I'm actually using a really low alpha variety so that I can kind of use more of them and get some of that flavor and character in there without, jacking up the beers.
Without the, Why mash hop, something like this? I mean, if you're not using a thiol focused yeast, which would be my, normal mash hop now, regimen,
right.
Why go to extra trouble around that?
I think that to me, when you taste the wort going to the kettle, it's there. You can taste that it has made its impression on the wort itself. So, there's a lot of debate about does it do anything at all? I don't know. And to be honest, I haven't brewed all day without the mash hops and with the mash hops, did the side by side.
Right.
It's just, it is what it is. And I think that everything, every little bit of nuance that you can put into such a light beer like this is worth it.
And it does carry through even, as you go through this, because now you're running it through this hot side process, adding more in there. You think you can really, catch the layer that it adds to it.
Yeah, I think it's nuanced for sure. But, that beer to me has a really nice round, pleasant hop character that's, more than just bittering and aroma,
Yeah. And whirlpool hops in that one too.
Yep. Gets a decent whirlpool charge. The featured hops in this beer were at the time, the two of the coolest hops I could get my hands on, Simcoe and Amarillo.
Yeah.
And even to this day, Simcoe is probably my favorite variety.
Why?
I love the combination of pine and a little bit of pineapple. To me, it's classic enough with some more of a modern twist, but they don't ever get to too pungent for me. Now we do select all our hops too, so you can see quite the range. In spectrum, and when they get picked, and they can get pretty catty and whatnot. But
sure.
The ones that we are selecting are
the volume you all buy at puts you pretty high up there on the list for that.
For sure.
So
they'll let us pick them. In fact, we've been doing it so long that they do a great pre-selection for us.
Yeah.
Because at that volume, you can't taste it.
Sure.
Check out every lot. So, but our vendors are, that's the importance of establishing relationships with your vendors and working with them and trusting that they're going to take care of you too.
How's that work? You just, create a general kind of, spec rundown with, the certain levels of certain things that you're looking for in a kind of a broader sense.
Yeah. You try, and when you work with the same people over time, they get an idea. There's other vendors that are, really committed to figuring that out, even to the point we have one vendor who uses GC to measure the hops that you've been selecting and matching it up and be like, hey, you like these kind of hops, here you go.
They can profile you and then match that against what they have.
Exactly.
And know how to not put things in front of you that might be too far out of that general range.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting to see where that technology goes. Of course, that's some expensive stuff to do to
Right.
test all of the lots that way and get it there. So you have to have a large customer that's buying a lot of that in order to make that all make sense. No, that's interesting. Are there specific things that you look for as you pick those, either from a sensory or from a compound kind of threshold level?
Well, I'm just looking for aromas, really. We have obviously specs of what we traditionally have chosen. We run our hops through sensory panel so that we have sensory notes on what we're looking for. So that guides us. But when it comes down to it, it's like you can tell, like this lot just smells really good.
Yeah,
this one's good too, but this one's better. Let's make sure we get this one in there.
And so it can be just a better and just that kind of pleasure hedonic kind of judgment.
And the nice thing is when they do that pre-selection and everything is pretty close, then you're just like this one smells better. So
how do you for a business this size, imagine you're doing that with multiple people, and working together as a team. How do you share some of these ideas and build some of these ideas of spec and quality and what it should be? And then, communicate and translate that across the entire team that's working on this.
Well, just some organization, and the team that handles that is a bit condensed.
Yeah.
There's half a dozen of us that regularly go out to Yakima during harvest and participate in that. So it's kind of a small team. It's a lot to bite off. You can easily burn out your senses. Sure. If you're trying to get through too many at a time, and it can be exhausting. But it's one of my favorites.
You don't do yourself any favors at Sports Center or the other spots
even
later.
The Sports Center, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's a great trip though, and it's one of the most important things I think we can do. Is be involved in the raw materials and make sure you're getting the best.
Sure. And then build those relationships too. So again, that the agricultural side counts on the beer side, and our investment in that allows them to make the investments that help improve quality for what we do.
Yeah, especially the hop guys. It's been fun growing with them. Because before craft brewing, it was probably not very exciting for them, right?
It's actually amazing and incredible if you look in just 10 years how many acres have been added to agricultural production in the Pacific Northwest. I think it's almost double the acres now that are growing hops compared to what they were 10 years ago. And so I mean, like, that is such a fundamental change. If you look at the value of the crop, it's gone from I think 180 million a year to over 600 million a year now. I mean, that's a phenomenal increase for a crop like that. Are there any other tricks or secrets, to All Day IPA, that you think help just make that low ABV approach to hoppy beer really work?
That about sums it up. Big adjuncts, get your hops in lots of different spots. Try not to overdo it. And I've kind of taken that
warm, dry hop.
Yes, definitely get your hops in there. Before biotransformation was the catchword, we did it because it just tasted better. You could tell if you get them in there early enough, while there's still activity, it just seems like you get better extraction and a different extraction. We had beers that we cold dry hopped for a while, and it's just there's no comparison.
So you are dry hopping All Day IPA while there's still fermentation happening.
Indeed.
That's at this scale.
Yeah.
How do you manage yeast through something like that if you've got hops in there with it?
Yeah, we had to start a propagation system.
Yeah.
We were harvesting for a while and trying to, get it before the dry hop, and it was difficult. And now that we prop regularly, it's smooth sailing.
Okay, that's cool and a little crazy to do that at that scale, but kind of fun and interesting to think about, which now of course makes sense to why you might mash hop also, because it creates some persistent stuff that the yeast can also continue to work on there through that.
Sure.
Interesting. And you just do that with a more kind of standard clean California ale yeast, or is there some other way that you take fermentation with it?
Yeah, our house ale yeast is American ale yeast.
Okay.
We've had the same in-house strain that we've been, at this point it's pretty custom because we've been selecting the cells that we want. So it's kind of turned into its own thing, and we love it. But it's clean, it's neutral. For the kind of beers that I was making, especially back in the day, that's what I wanted. Get the yeast in there, let it do its thing, and then get out of the way and let the malt and the hops do the talking. So and also, back in the day, to have one yeast strain to manage was enough. Now that we have, more dedication to the yeast department, and I feel better about, managing a couple more strains.
Sure. Well, I want to talk about extending that all day range into the hazy side as well as the black IPA side, which, again, I'm just excited about the idea that you have a black all day IPA. That's so cool. Before you do that, from the rotatable pickup tube on Rogue Brewing's pilot brewhouse to the integrated hopbacks on Sierra Nevada's twin prototyping brewhouses, SS Brewtech has taken technology they invented, working with world-renowned industry veterans, and made them available to every craft brewer. To learn more about SS Brewtech's innovation list, head on over to ssbrewtech.com. Also, 100% recycled, 100% recyclable, and reusable. PackTech handles are the sustainable solution to handle your craft beer. PackTech has been a leading producer of secondary packaging for the craft beer industry for over 30 years, and their handles are found across the globe. By fully embracing the principles of circular economy, PackTech helps customers meet their own ambitious, sustainable goals. 100% recycled, 100% recyclable, and reusable. PackTech is the sustainable packaging solution for your craft beer. Order your free samples today. Call 541-461-5000. That's 541-461-5000. And of course, tell them you heard it here on the Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast. And Berkeley Yeast, the creators of Tropics Yeast, which provides massive notes of guava and passion fruit, now bring you Thiol Boost. Berkeley Yeast's Thiol Boost is pure liquid thiol precursors that take Tropics to the next level. Add it to the fermenter when you pitch the yeast and prepare yourself for tropical fruit nirvana. The concentration of precursors is the same in every batch of Thiol Boost, so you can predictably tune the level of tropical flavor by adjusting the dosage. Mention this podcast, get 15% off your next order. Berkeley Yeast, ordinary yeast made extraordinary. So let's talk about how you, then turn around and take a brand like All Day, which is a juggernaut, a powerhouse of a brand, and certainly something that you can't screw up, and make hazy iteration of it. What changes in that process?
Making hazy beers was different. I had to.
You didn't want to make it.
Well, and I had to unlearn everything and go about it kind of backwards, to keep that haze in there and keep the haze stable. I think when hazy started, and it was little nano breweries and larger, but mostly come to my brewery and get this hazy we're releasing today, and then go home and drink it. I knew I had to send this thing all over the country, and it has to be stable. I can't have it dropping out in the cans. So, making a stable haze was, a bit of a challenge, but we figured we've
just store the can upside down and turn it over before you drink it. Right.
Exactly. So I'm happy where it landed. It's not a thick mucky hazy, but it's there. And now I do believe that having those proteins in suspension and giving something for those hop oils and whatnot to latch on to creates a more intense and longer lasting aroma. So I believe there is some scientific truth behind it. It's not just an appearance thing. So taking the tricks we had learned for that, of course I had to.
You're already brewing with a lot of other things in the regular All Day, and so it seems like you weren't that far off from what would be possible. To start with.
Switched to a better yeast strain, a more applicable,
more hazy
hazy strain.
Haze positive, yeah.
So we did that. What else? I got took some of the adjuncts out, ramped up some of the other ones. Made sure the oats and the wheat were a little more dominant there. And then I had to get some citra hops in there, of course, right? Because you can't make a hazy if you don't have some citra hops on hand. I had kind of missed out on citra back in the day. Citra was actually I had gotten really deep into Amarillo and then Simcoe and then and I had Mosaic going too, and it was like I just couldn't handle another hop variety in my portfolio. So I kind of skipped the Citra for a while. But then, so I'm new to the Citra game too, just in the last few years. So it's fun. It's it's a bit aggressive. I like it as a addition to the dry hop, not necessarily the whole thing, but I think you get 25% Citra in there, and you're going to make all the other ones kind of pop more. So this does have some Citra in the dry hop. And yeah, that's about it. That's kind of what we did to hazify it.
Switched up yeast. Could you tell me where you ended up on that, or is that a proprietary secret?
Mean, it's a London strain.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
When you think about making, building that beer, so that it can be shelf stable, and when it eventually gets shipped across the country and sits out, warm for a little while in a store, it doesn't just get completely shattered. What are, some of the other, are there any other production concerns that fit, or considerations, that figure into your process to make, give that life? I mean, I think, in a realistic sense, there is something, that folks like Sierra Nevada, being able to make a hazy beer and make it stable in all of, this wide range of potential retail scenarios. It's its own feat in addition to coming up with a good and compelling recipe.
Yeah. I mean, really just on the quality side, watching those TPOs every step. Thankfully we've got the infrastructure to invest in the best packaging equipment, because that's really where you're going to screw your beer up, right? Brewers tend to get a little too concerned about the kettle and even fermentation, but then if you don't invest in some good packaging, all your hard work's going to go to waste. So, fortunately we have that. We have, round the clock quality coverage and checking the beer every step of the way. So it makes me feel good about what we send out. But the truth is, it's a hoppy beer, and if it sits on the warm shelf, it's going to deteriorate. That's our lives right now.
The lightest possible, malt that you can use in it, so that it stays that nice light color. Mm-hmm. Is that a 2-row, or
it's our 2-row house malt, basically?
Sure.
Yep.
Sure. You haven't gone Pilsner malt on that, have you?
No, I can't. I can't afford that.
Sure. Well, how about this, all day black IPA, which, I think is fascinating. And I love that, that you would, play in that kind of realm, and, because it's not as if black IPA is the style, although I think it's coming back a little bit.
I hope so.
It's been kind of nice to see it. We're actually in the midst of our annual IPA issue now, and we've received quite a few black IPAs,
wow.
for the IPA issue.
Yeah, it's a fun style. It's something we've been working on for years. When you had all day IPA, then all night IPA seemed the logical thing to have also. So yeah. I thought that should be a black beer. It's fun. That was another one that's difficult to get the balance right on.
Yeah.
Trying to make it hop forward enough, not and have that hints of dark malt, but not obviously not portery or stouty. You want to feature those hops and have the mouth feel be light and what you would expect, and of course had to make it sessionable too, mm-hmm. To fit in the all day family. But we're just having some fun in the tap room. I've done a couple. Let's see, what else did I do? I had a cold IPA that we did last winter, the chill day, that came out real nice. That's fun. I love lager, yeast, and heavy hop doses. I think that they play real nice together, and I think that it holds up better too over the long term. I think that beer degrades more slowly than our ales. I don't know the science behind it, but that's one that I don't mind drinking 3-4 months after package. And then we've got a West Coast version coming out too. So we're just try and hit all the genres of IPA and see if we can't do a nice session version. And yeah,
cool. Well, maybe we switch gears and talk about barrel aging. Sure. At this point. The KBS family is a well-known one amongst across the beer world. You all also do barrel aged versions of your Scottish ale, You do all sorts of barrel age. You put a lot of beers, into barrels. Talk to me about the genesis of that program and what you have found, in terms of, especially with something like turning breakfast stout into KBS and brewing 4 barrels. How that has impacted some of your approach to brewing those beers.
Yeah, it's just been a lot of trial and error. Like you said, we started, breakfast stout going into bourbon barrels, eventually became the first KBS, all just experimenting, trying to see what it does and how to make it better. So, we made some adjustments to that breakfast stout recipe when we wanted to do KBS for real. It needed more malt, it needed more coffee, more chocolate, all those nice characters kind of diminish over the year in the barrel. So
everything just came up.
Yes, everything had to come up to handle the year that we give it in the wood,
including ABV.
Yep. So that was the first, and then that was so fun. We did put Dirty Bastard into barrels as the next one, and that came out pretty amazing. That one I actually didn't have to do anything to, and then there's Backwoods Bastard, and that kind of started a trend of me just trying virtually any beer that sounded fun in a barrel, and kind of grew that program into, once again, it's trying to keep some variety out there, keep the people interested. They want to see what's new. And shit, we built a whole facility to handle barrel aging, and the handling of the barrels. So, we're equipped to do it. So let's, we'll make some barrel aged beers and get them out there.
You built a whole facility?
We did. The barrel house. Yes. It includes a lot of our warehouse space. In fact, most of our warehouse space. But at this point, it's also where we have the space to fill and empty and move barrels around. Because that's one of the things we just keep running out of room for handling barrels in existing facilities. So it was nice to just kind of dedicate a space to it and be like, this is where we're going to do it. We're going to make it work here. We'll install things that will help in the process and make it as easy as we can on ourselves.
Now, the world of barrel-aged stout has also been going through its own interesting changes. I almost equate it to, like movements in the wine world where, you can see things, the trends change, over several years, the expectations of body, less body, thick, bold versus more soft and nuanced. The same kind of movements are happening in that world as also happen in the stout world. Yeah, and in this barrel-aged stout world, you have, those certain beers that are, become traded and collected and shared only in 1-ounce samples amongst friends in big bottle shares, or you have, a different model where, other breweries are trying to find ways of, putting barrel-aged beers out there at a price point where people can feel comfortable drinking one by themselves in a smaller format or a 12-ounce bottle instead of a 750. And there's this big broad range, but that, it's interesting how the consumption mode impacts the approach to brewing and everything else. How have you all responded, to some of this changing context for barrel-aged beer? Yeah,
we've been through some pack size changes. I think that the big bottles, the 750s, were hot for a while there. Like you said, it's something you share with your friends. And then I don't know, people seem to be, they gravitate more towards the 12 ounce, and I get it too. I would rather have a 4-pack, drink one now, give one to a friend, save one, see what happens, and so. The thing about KBS too is, I got another recipe that I haven't really done anything to. It's just kind of a bit of a benchmark for, where barrel aged beer began, and there's a lot more extreme barrel aged beers out there at this point. But I like KBS for its balance, for its it's a bit sophisticated in that it's It's not going to club you over the head with any particular flavor, but there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of things that have to dance around with each other, and I think it's dialed in pretty good for having good body, but not motor oil, and having plenty of coffee character, but not to the point where it's it gets acrid and astringent. So it's fun. It's been a fun base, and And of course now we're doing variants of that as well. And again, just trying to keep the consumer engaged and interested. And hopefully as you try these variants, and you'll remember to buy regular KBS too.
How do you balance some of those things? That obviously that acrid or ashy kind of character that can pop up, whether it's from coffee or from significant amounts of roasted malt, can set this off in a different way. Balancing the kind of sweetness to bitterness, with all of these other, pieces going on, especially with anything in a bourbon barrel, like it has to have some sweetness. And if it doesn't, then the bourbon barrel is going to add just a harsh tannic character that's really unpleasant. And so sweetness is really is necessary to go along with that. What are some of those kind of key points as you're building balance amongst those things?
Yeah. Well, like you said, some body, definitely start with some body that will thin out in the barrel. You use your specialty grains, mash temperature, adjuncts again are a big thing. There's a lot of oats there going on in KBS. The chocolate helps with some implied sweetness. That chocolate's all fermented out, but something what it leaves behind and that character. And then the use of the coffee is there's a lot of different ways to get coffee into a beer. We still just we're steeping coarse grounds in the cold side. Up to a week, I think is appropriate.
Really? That long?
Mm-hmm.
A week?
Up to a week. I think we started a week and have been able to scale back. It reaches a saturation point, and then if you let it go too long, you'll get some.
And you get your green pepper and whatnot.
Green pepper, isn't that weird?
Yeah. It is funny, but it does happen.
It totally does.
Are there, some coffee varieties that are better at, keeping you away from that than others?
I think so. I mean, we work
a week
with.
Sounds like a long time. I mean, I know there are a lot of brewers that would never, past 24 hours, they want it off coffee. And now there's a lot of folks that are just, whole bean, not even grinding it in order to try to, keep it super minimal and avoid that coffee character.
Yeah. I don't know. I like
that would be a very inefficient process for the volume that you guys make. So.
Right. Exactly. You got to think about that too. And, and then there's so many different ways, people recirculating, people making, cold brew, basically cold brew. But we found a thing that works, and at this point, it's still manageable. I mean, it's a lot of extra work for our cellar team, but I think no matter what you do is going to be work. So at this point, you go with what works for the beer, and like I said, I'm not looking to fix it. And even with these old recipes is what it is, and I think that it's still good, and people love our coffee beers. We work with a local roaster who's been super helpful. And you asked about varieties and whatnot. I'm not a coffee expert myself, so I lean on these guys a lot to kind of help me. And if I can tell them generally what I'm doing with it, what I'm going for, what the kind of beer is, they've been great about helping me through it. They're the experts there, and I trust them. And I do a lot of tastings with them and whatnot. But it's different for me. It's I'm getting better, but picking out the nuances. You really got to sit down and dig into it to kind of see where so many subtle changes, whether it's the bean or the roast level. But they've been great about customizing and working with us on that stuff.
Do they roast it in any particular way? There's also maybe a bit of nuttiness to the coffee character that which adds a nice dimension to the beer.
Sure, yeah. We can just they're drum roasting and you can. It could be more or less roasted. I think generally they go for a lesser roast on most of their coffees because
they're coffee people.
Well, they're coffee people. That's what they want. My wife drinks the darkest French roast she can get her hands on because that's what she wants. So she doesn't love their coffee, but but they'll do whatever. If I want them to roast it more, they'll roast it more, and I'll get some more of that burnt character out of it.
Yeah.
But they've been great.
It's funny how all the coffee roasters these days want it light and berry and capture all the nuance of that and don't destroy it with a hefty roast. Well, let's talk. What's on the horizon for you? Obviously you have to constantly engage in R&D. You brewing new beers, putting them out here in the tap room, testing them out, seeing what people respond to. Working out some ideas and things. What's some of that R&D process look like for you all? And what do you mentioned you like lager yeast and hoppy beers, and so are there other things that you all are working on through that process to try to lock down?
Well, I think it's a bit divided. Our attentions there's a lot of our vendors are doing a lot of innovating themselves with raw materials. A lot of new hop forms, I think, to check out. That avenue is growing really fast, and there's always been different ways to extract hops, and this will use this for bitterness, use this for head retention, use this here. We've been using hop extracts for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I love the CO2 extract. I love the clean bitterness you get out of it. I love the way it's shelf stable and will last much longer. So we incorporate a lot of those now.
Also less expensive to ship because it's so concentrated.
Yeah. Takes up way less space.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have to keep it in the cooler. So we love those hop extracts. Of course, still using.
Are there specific ones that you really love?
We've actually extracted quite a few of our varieties, and anything early to mid to almost to mid-late boil, we'll get away with using extract. Save our T90s for whirlpool chargers and of course dry hops. Getting into the lupulin powders, and those have been we found success with those in the dry hop, and there's plenty of other downstream products. I think the holy grail right now everyone's looking for is a cold side aroma product, something water soluble that you can mix in after the fact and get that hop aroma.
Spectrum, I think
Spectrum's a new one from Haas. So I have some samples of that I got to work through. Trying to keep up with that.
Some of what what we've been talking about, there's the other fun part where we've got folks like Kelsey at North Park that are use things off the recommended menu for using it.
Well, of course they will. They're brewers.
Finding the creative ways. Are there any other creative off-menu things you guys have been doing?
I just got myself a little 1-barrel system, so I can actually have a pilot system now before I brew everything on the 30-barrel. And it's great. It's a great size for our tap room.
Back to the 1-barrel system again, huh?
Everything comes back around. So this will actually allow me to kind of work through some ideas a little quicker. When you're brewing 30 barrels at a time, like one 30-barrel batch is great for our tap room. They'll drink that up in a month or maybe two. But if I brew something, I'm like, okay, I want to make a slight change to it. I certainly don't need another 50, 60 kegs of it. So what this is going to allow me to do is to kind of work through the recipe, get it dialed in before I start scaling it. Probably at first on the 30 and then up to the 80 and then to the 300. But this gives me a little more. It takes the pressure off a little bit and lets me, really get things dialed in without worrying about what am I going to do with all this beer. So that, and also just, doing some different stuff. I think right now, we talked about lagers a little bit, but I've kind of got a real bug up my ass to figure out. I've been an ale brewer most of my life, so I got a lot to learn and I got a lot of stuff to try. I really want to kind of dial in my game on that. That's probably what I'll spend a lot of time doing on that 1-barrel. And a lager
on a 1-barrel,
right?
Man,
lagers are hot. Lagers are hot, at least with brewers right now. I don't know that the consumer is caught up in their passion to us, but I know we all want to, get back to that. I don't know that
IPA is hot because brewers got excited about it.
Yeah. Well, now we're kind of like maybe getting over it a little bit.
Right. But I'm just saying, I think brewers drive a lot of these trends. And so, the interest in lagers will, I think it's not hard to convince a consumer to drink a lager because there are a lot of consumers out there that just only drink lager.
That's true. And
maybe this is opening up, has the potential to open up a whole new audience to it. What are there specific avenues in the lager world that particularly excite you?
I'll probably start just brewing some more traditional, but I think what's really cool is what brewers did to ales, right? What American brewers in particular did was put our own spin on all these varieties. Even British and German beers, we kind of we Americanized them. We put our own hops in, we put our own twist on it. So that that hasn't really happened with ale yet or with lagers, but I would love to do that. And I think that, like I said, hop forward lagers in particular are exciting to me, and there's not enough of them.
It's fantastic. We did do, we are watching that evolution of real time with, West Coast Pilsner, California Pilsner, whatever you want to call it. You can call it however. But we're watching these, the lines again get blurred between what these beers are. And I think as soon as people think they've got it all figured out, I love the creativity that just blows all of that apart and shows that there's more flavor and more fun possible. If you blend through these things and find clever mixes of all of these styles and do them in different kinds of ways. Anyway, that's the fun thing about beer. The creativity can drive the conversation more than just a bland or dogged adherence to existing
That's
structures.
What it's all about. I mean, we just love flavor. We drink. We want to drink things that taste good and are inspiring, and that just keeps us going. And the consumer will, if they're not there, they'll catch up.
You also get to help them catch up.
Yeah, for sure.
Help bring them along, and the enthusiasm that you get to show for it as a brewer, can also help change consumers' minds.
Yeah, indeed.
Sure. Well, I think that's a great place to bring this to a close. G&D Chillers has partnered with 3,000 plus breweries around the country and offers 24/7 service and support. Tina's hop oils give your beer all the hop intensity with none of the astringency. AccuBrew gives brewers like you unprecedented insight into your fermentation process. ProBrew solutions are specifically designed to help you brew your beer. Old Orchard's craft concentrates have shipped to 46 states from right here in Beer City, USA. SS Brewtech has taken tech they invented working with industry vets and made them available to every craft brewer. PacTech handles are the sustainable solution to handle your craft beer. And Berkeley Yeast's Thiol Boost is pure liquid thiol precursors that take tropics to the next level. Of course, if you enjoy this podcast, go to beerbrewing.com, click on that subscribe button, support what we do, and show us this content matters to you. I would ask where people might want to learn more about Founders, but it's pretty ubiquitous out there in the world. Just Google Founders. And, if you come up to Grand Rapids, tap room right here on the south side of downtown in Grand Rapids. Jeremy, thanks for joining me on the podcast. Thanks for talking about the way you all brew.
It's been real fun. Thank you.
Cool. Cheers.
Cheers.
This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.